Welcome, Shadow Whispers, to another spine-chilling journey into the dark corners of history. Today, we're exploring some of the most haunted cemeteries in Australia, where the past refuses to stay buried. From convict graves to ghostly apparitions, these eerie locations are not just places of rest, they're haunted reminders of the suffering, tragedy, and torment that occurred long ago. So, turn off the lights, grab a blanket, and prepare yourself for a tale of restless spirits and ancient graves, as we uncover the most haunted cemeteries in Australia. Don't forget to subscribe, because the shadows have many more stories to tell. Let's dive in. 10. Port Arthur Cemetery, Isle of the Dead, TAS. Located off the Tasman Peninsula in Tasmania, Australia, Port Arthur Cemetery and its adjacent Isle of the Dead are places steeped in history and ghostly legends. Both sites are part of the broader Port Arthur Historic Site, a former convict settlement, and today, they are one of Australia's most haunted and historically rich locations. Together, they represent a chilling connection to the convict past and the dark tales of spirits that have lingered ever since. Port Arthur was established in 1830 as a convict settlement for Britain's most hardened criminals. It served as a place where convicts were sent to serve their sentences under harsh conditions. The settlement became notorious for its extreme punishments, including the use of solitary confinement, which left many of its inhabitants broken and mad. By the mid-19th century, it housed several hundred convicts, with the surrounding lands used for farming, timber milling, and other work. The Isle of the Dead, a small, isolated island located off the coast of Port Arthur, became the final resting place for many of those who died in the settlement. The cemetery was officially opened in 1833 and, over the years, became the burial site for convicts, soldiers, free settlers, and their families. The island earned its name because of its grim history and isolation. It was here that prisoners who died in Port Arthur were buried, often without ceremony. Interestingly, a large portion of those buried on the Isle of the Dead were convicts who had suffered under the harsh conditions of the settlement. Some were marked only by crude, unmarked graves, while others, particularly the more prominent individuals, had simple headstones. It is believed that more than 1,000 individuals were buried here, making it a site of tremendous historical significance. The history of Port Arthur and the Isle of the Dead is undeniably tragic, and it is this deep connection to suffering, death, and isolation that many believe contributes to the site's haunted reputation. Though the Isle of the Dead had already become a place of ghostly rumors, the Port Arthur Massacre of 1996 cast a dark shadow over the site. The massacre, in which 35 people lost their lives, is an unforgettable tragedy in modern Australian history. While this event occurred long after the convict era had ended, many believe it added to the accumulated grief and spirits that haunt the region, possibly stirring up the lingering souls of those who had suffered and died there. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the Isle of the Dead is the apparition of a tall figure often seen walking along the graves. Witnesses claim that this figure appears near the water's edge or among the rows of headstones. It's said to vanish suddenly, leaving a cold and unsettling atmosphere behind. Another widely reported encounter involves the Lady in White, a spectral figure who has been seen walking near the ruins of the old convict buildings. Visitors claim she appears to be wearing 19th-century clothing, with her face often obscured by a veil. Some have heard her sobbing softly or seen her vanish into thin air, leaving behind a chilling silence. On many occasions, visitors have reported hearing whispers or voices during their tours of the cemetery. Often these voices are said to come from the direction of the graves on the Isle of the Dead. The voices are described as soft and muffled, as if from another time. Some claim to hear the voices of convicts calling out for mercy, while others report hearing the sounds of footsteps behind them, even when no one else is nearby. The cold spots are another commonly reported phenomenon at Port Arthur and the Isle of the Dead. Visitors walking near the graves or around the old buildings often experience sudden drops in temperature. The cold is often accompanied by an intense feeling of being watched or followed. Many paranormal investigators have recorded electromagnetic anomalies in these areas, adding to the belief that spirits inhabit the site. Rumors. Restless convicts. The most common rumor about Port Arthur and the Isle of the Dead is that the spirits of the convicts who suffered and died there are unable to find peace. Many believe that these restless souls still roam the grounds, their tormented cries echoing through the night. It is said that the cruelty of their punishments, many were sent to solitary confinement, left deep emotional scars, and these scars have resulted in a lasting supernatural presence. The ghost of the commandant. There are rumors that the ghost of the commandant, a figure of authority at Port Arthur, is said to haunt the ruins of the commandant's house. This apparition has been reported as a tall, imposing figure in military attire. Visitors to the area have claimed to see him walking through the ruins, while others have heard the sound of heavy footsteps following them. The execution site. Another disturbing legend surrounds the execution site at Port Arthur, where at least 14 people were publicly hanged for their crimes. Many believe that the souls of these executed men still haunt the area, with several reports of ghostly figures seen at the site where the executions took place. There are also stories of the sound of a rope creaking, or the sudden sighting of spectral figures hanging from trees. The suffering of the convicts, the tragic deaths, and the isolation of the cemetery contribute significantly to its haunted reputation. Death from disease, execution, and poor conditions in the settlement meant that many were laid to rest in a hurry, without ceremony or family. This lack of closure is thought to contribute to the restless spirits that haunt the site. The Port Arthur Massacre of 1996 added a layer of modern tragedy to the historical grief of the area, with many believing the spirits of both the convicts and the massacre victims are intertwined, forever linked by the tragic history of Port Arthur. The island's isolation and its history of burial without ceremony or recognition are key factors believed to create an atmosphere of tension and unresolved anguish. This tension, combined with centuries of rumors and stories of eerie occurrences, has led to the Isle of the Dead being regarded as one of Australia's most haunted locations. 9. Ballarat Old Cemetery, Ballarat, Vic. Located in the historic city of Ballarat, Victoria, the Ballarat Old Cemetery is a storied burial ground steeped in the history of Australia's gold rush era. Established in the 19th century, the cemetery has seen its share of triumphs and tragedies. Over time, it has become known not only as a place of rest but also as one of Victoria's most haunted locations. The Ballarat Old Cemetery was established in 1856, during the height of the Australian gold rush. Ballarat was a bustling hub of activity, attracting miners, fortune seekers, and their families. As the population grew, so did the need for a proper burial ground. The cemetery's design reflects the diverse cultural and religious makeup of the time, with separate sections allocated for Catholics, Protestants, and Chinese immigrants. The Chinese section, in particular, holds historical significance, as it highlights the contributions and struggles of Chinese miners during the gold rush. One of the most notable features of the cemetery is the Eureka Rebellion Memorial, dedicated to the miners who lost their lives during the infamous Eureka Stockade in 1854. This violent uprising, a pivotal moment in Australian history, left a lasting impact on the region and its people. Many of the rebellion's casualties are buried here, their graves a somber reminder of the sacrifices made for justice and democracy. The cemetery also became the final resting place for victims of mining accidents, diseases, and the harsh living conditions of the era. Epidemics such as typhoid and smallpox claimed numerous lives, and the hurried burials of the afflicted added an air of melancholy to the cemetery. As the years passed, stories of ghostly encounters began to emerge. Locals and visitors alike reported strange phenomena, leading many to believe that the spirits of those buried here remain restless. The cemetery's connection to the Eureka Stockade, the hurried burials during epidemics, and the unmarked graves of paupers are thought to contribute to its haunted reputation. The cemetery's isolated atmosphere, especially at night, adds to its eerie allure. Overgrown sections, weathered headstones, and the whispers of the wind through ancient trees create a setting ripe for supernatural speculation. A spectral figure believed to be a miner from the Eureka Stockade has been seen wandering the cemetery. Witnesses describe him as dressed in 19th-century attire, often appearing near the memorial. Some say he carries a lantern, while others report hearing faint cries of anguish and defiance. One of the cemetery's most famous ghosts is the weeping woman, thought to be mourning the loss of her children to disease. Visitors have reported seeing her sitting by a particular grave, her face obscured by a veil. She disappears when approached, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of sorrow. At night, unexplained lights have been seen hovering over certain graves, particularly in the Chinese section. Shadowy figures are also reported, moving quickly between headstones or lingering at the edges of the cemetery. Paranormal investigators and visitors alike have experienced sudden drops in temperature, often accompanied by faint whispers or an inexplicable feeling of being watched. These phenomena are most commonly reported near the paupers' graves and the Chinese section. Rumors. 1. Unmarked graves. The cemetery contains numerous unmarked graves, especially in the paupers section. It is believed that the spirits of those buried without recognition still linger, seeking acknowledgement. 2. Disturbed rest. During periods of expansion and maintenance, some graves were reportedly disturbed, leading to an increase in paranormal activity. 3. Cursed ground. Some locals claim that part of the cemetery was built on land considered sacred by indigenous Australians, adding a layer of spiritual unrest. 4. The Chinese elder. In the Chinese section, a tall figure in traditional robes has been sighted. Thought to be the spirit of a respected elder, he is said to guard the graves and ward off intruders. The combination of violent deaths during the Eureka Stockade, epidemics, and the hurried burials of paupers contribute to the cemetery's haunted reputation. The energy of those who died under tragic or unjust circumstances is believed to linger, manifesting as ghostly apparitions or unexplained phenomena. The cemetery's historical significance and eerie ambience make it a focal point for paranormal enthusiasts and historians alike. Its stories are passed down through generations, blending fact with folklore and ensuring its place in Ballarat's cultural memory. 8. Freemantle Cemetery, Freemantle, WA. Nestled in the port city of Freemantle, Western Australia, Freemantle Cemetery is a historic burial ground with a reputation for being a serene yet mysteriously eerie location. Established in the late 19th century, the cemetery has seen thousands of burials, encompassing notable figures and ordinary citizens alike. Over time, its peaceful facade has given way to chilling tales of ghostly encounters, cementing its place as one of Australia's most haunted locations. Freemantle Cemetery was officially opened in 1899 to serve the growing population of Fremantle and surrounding areas. Located on Carrington Street, the site was chosen for its expansive grounds and proximity to the city. It replaced earlier, smaller cemeteries that were becoming overcrowded. The cemetery features a variety of sections for different religious denominations, reflecting the diverse community of Fremantle. Its carefully landscaped grounds include rows of headstones, ornate mausoleums, and a memorial garden. The cemetery also houses a crematorium and a mausoleum, which were added in later years. Freemantle Cemetery is the final resting place for many significant figures in Western Australia's history, including politicians, artists, and war veterans. Among the most notable is Bon Scott, the iconic lead singer of AC/DC, whose grave has become a pilgrimage site for fans worldwide. The cemetery has seen its share of tragedies, including the interment of victims from maritime disasters and local epidemics. These events added layers of sorrow and significance to the grounds, making it a place of both mourning and remembrance. Over time, Freemantle Cemetery became a hotspot for ghost stories and paranormal activity. Visitors and staff began reporting unexplained phenomena, from eerie noises to ghostly apparitions. Its vast grounds and history of tragic burials make it a magnet for supernatural lore. The transition from a peaceful resting place to a haunted location is often attributed to the unmarked graves, disturbed spirits, and the lingering energy of those who met untimely deaths. One of the most famous ghosts of Freemantle Cemetery is the White Lady, a spectral figure seen wandering among the graves at night. Witnesses describe her as a translucent figure dressed in white, often weeping or appearing lost. She is believed to be the spirit of a woman who died tragically and was buried in the cemetery during its early years. The crematorium at Freemantle Cemetery is another focal point of paranormal activity. Staff have reported hearing disembodied voices, footsteps, and even screams coming from the building late at night. Cold spots and flickering lights are common occurrences, adding to the building's eerie reputation. The grave of Bon Scott attracts thousands of visitors each year, and some claim to feel an unusual energy around his burial site. There have been reports of faint strains of music, laughter, and even the shadowy figure of a man resembling Scott appearing near his grave. Visitors to the cemetery at night have reported seeing floating orbs of light and shadowy figures darting between the trees and headstones. These phenomena are often accompanied by an overwhelming sense of being watched. Near a section of the cemetery where children were buried, people have heard the faint sound of a child crying. Despite thorough searches, no source for the sound has ever been found. Rumors. 1. Disturbed graves. It is rumored that renovations and expansions of the cemetery disturbed several graves, leading to heightened paranormal activity. 2. The forgotten paupers. The cemetery has a section for unmarked paupers' graves, and some believe the spirits of these forgotten individuals roam the grounds, seeking recognition. 3. The phantom carriage. On foggy nights, some visitors have reported seeing a ghostly horse-drawn carriage moving silently through the cemetery before vanishing into the mist. 4. Haunted gatekeeper. An apparition of a man in old-fashioned attire, believed to be a former caretaker, has been seen near the main entrance, silently observing visitors before disappearing. Freemantle Cemetery's haunted reputation stems from its long history and the emotional energy tied to the lives and deaths of those buried there. Unmarked graves, tragic burials, and a history of disruptions to the site are thought to contribute to its paranormal activity. The mix of natural beauty, solemnity, and unexplained phenomena creates an atmosphere that fuels ghost stories and attracts paranormal enthusiasts. 7. Tuong Cemetery, Brisbane, QLD. Situated in Brisbane, Queensland, Tuong Cemetery is one of Australia's largest and oldest cemeteries. Spanning over 400,000 square meters, this historic burial ground is not just a final resting place for thousands of people but also a site steeped in mystery and tales of the supernatural. From its inception in the 19th century to its reputation as a haunted location, Tuong Cemetery continues to intrigue visitors with its mix of history and paranormal lore. Tuong Cemetery was officially opened in 1875, chosen for its location on the outskirts of Brisbane to accommodate the growing population. The cemetery replaced the overcrowded Paddington Cemetery and quickly became the city's primary burial ground. The first burial was that of a 5-year-old boy named George David Gregory in 1875. Over the decades, the cemetery expanded to include thousands of graves, representing people from all walks of life, including politicians, soldiers, pioneers, and everyday citizens. Notable figures buried here include Sir Samuel Griffith, one of Australia's founding fathers, and poet Steele Rudd. The cemetery is known for its Victorian and Edwardian funerary art, with elaborate headstones, crypts, and mausoleums. Its layout reflects the social divisions of the era, with separate sections for various religious denominations and cultural groups. Tuong Cemetery's early history was marked by challenges such as the harsh Queensland climate, which affected the preservation of graves. Additionally, epidemics like typhoid and the Spanish flu claimed many lives, leading to mass burials in certain sections of the cemetery. By the mid-20th century, Tuong Cemetery began gaining a reputation for being haunted. The combination of its vast size, decaying graves, and tragic history made it a fertile ground for ghost stories and paranormal encounters. Locals began reporting eerie phenomena such as ghostly apparitions, unexplained noises, and cold spots. The cemetery's isolated sections, especially after dark, became synonymous with tales of restless spirits and supernatural activity. One of the most famous spirits is believed to be Elizabeth Perkins, a woman buried in the early 20th century. Her grave is often adorned with flowers, yet no one claims to visit regularly. Visitors have reported seeing a ghostly figure of a woman standing near her grave at dusk, dressed in period clothing, before vanishing into thin air. The imposing statue known as the Angel of Death has its own haunting legend. Some claim its eyes follow visitors, while others report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread near the statue at night. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained energy fluctuations around this monument. Near a section of the cemetery where children were buried, people have reported seeing a spectral boy running and playing. His laughter has been heard echoing through the cemetery, only to abruptly stop, leaving an unsettling silence. At night, mysterious orbs of light have been spotted floating among the graves. These lights, often bluish or greenish, are said to move unnaturally and disappear when approached. Many visitors have reported hearing whispers and footsteps in areas where no one else is present. These sounds often seem to follow people as they walk through the cemetery, heightening their sense of unease. Rumors. 1. The cursed graves. Certain graves are rumored to be cursed, causing bad luck to anyone who disturbs them. This belief stems from stories of workers who allegedly fell ill or experienced accidents after repairing or moving headstones. 2. The phantom caretaker. There are tales of a ghostly caretaker who appears to patrol the cemetery at night, checking graves and silently observing visitors. 3. The lost souls of the paupers section. In the area designated for unmarked and paupers' graves, people have reported feeling an oppressive energy, as though the spirits of the forgotten are crying out for recognition. The cemetery's age, size, and number of burials contribute to its haunted reputation. Many believe that the spirits of those who died tragically or prematurely linger in the cemetery. The unmarked graves, combined with the emotional energy tied to the lives of the buried, add to the paranormal activity. Renovations and disturbances to the graves over the years are thought to have stirred up spiritual unrest. Additionally, the cemetery's location on a hill overlooking the city and its dramatic natural surroundings create an eerie atmosphere, especially at night. 6. Gawler Cemetery, Gawler, SA. Nestled in the historic town of Gawler, South Australia, Gawler Cemetery is a serene yet eerie resting place. Known for its rich history and tales of hauntings, the cemetery has become a magnet for both history enthusiasts and paranormal seekers. Established in the 19th century, it serves as a reminder of the town's early days, holding countless stories of tragedy, mystery, and ghostly encounters. Gawler Cemetery was established in the 1860s to accommodate the growing population of the town. Gawler, being one of South Australia's first regional settlements, experienced rapid growth due to its proximity to Adelaide and its role as a hub for agricultural and industrial activities. The cemetery became the final resting place for people from all walks of life, including pioneers, farmers, miners, and children who succumbed to diseases like smallpox, tuberculosis, and typhoid. Its headstones are a testament to the hardships faced by early settlers. The cemetery also reflects the cultural diversity of Gawler, with sections dedicated to different religious denominations. It includes graves of notable town figures who contributed to Gawler's development, as well as unmarked graves of those less fortunate. By the early 20th century, whispers of paranormal activity began circulating. Locals reported strange occurrences, including eerie sounds and unexplained movements near the cemetery grounds. The site's isolation and weathered appearance added to its ghostly aura, making it a focal point for tales of hauntings. Over the decades, the stories intensified, with visitors claiming to see apparitions and feel an unsettling presence. Paranormal investigators have since explored the cemetery, capturing strange phenomena and adding credibility to its haunted reputation. One of the most infamous legends is the shadow figure often seen lurking near older graves. Visitors describe it as a tall, dark silhouette that seems to move silently through the cemetery. Some believe it is the spirit of a gravedigger who accidentally lost his life on the job. Many visitors have reported hearing faint whispers when walking through the cemetery, especially during the evening. These whispers often sound like conversations or prayers, though no one else is around. Paranormal investigators have documented sudden drops in temperature in specific areas of the cemetery. Devices measuring electromagnetic activity frequently spike near graves that are said to be haunted. A ghostly woman, dressed in black and appearing to be in mourning, has been sighted near a cluster of children's graves. Legend has it that she is a grieving mother unable to move on from the loss of her children during a flu epidemic. Unexplained glowing orbs and flickering lights have been seen floating among the tombstones at night. These lights are often attributed to restless spirits or natural energy tied to the land. Rumors. 1. The cursed gravesite. Local lore speaks of a specific grave said to be cursed. Those who disturb it are rumored to face misfortune or experience chilling nightmares. 2. The forgotten souls. Many believe that the spirits of those buried in unmarked or neglected graves wander the cemetery, seeking recognition or closure. 3. The phantom caretaker. Some visitors claim to have encountered a ghostly caretaker who appears to watch over the cemetery. He is described as wearing old-fashioned clothing and carrying a lantern. Ballarat Cemetery's haunted reputation can be attributed to its age, tragic history, and the emotional energy tied to the lives of those buried there. Many graves belong to people who died prematurely, including children and workers who suffered fatal accidents. The unmarked graves and possible disturbances during renovations or expansions are also believed to stir up paranormal activity. The cemetery's location, surrounded by trees and often shrouded in mist, adds to its unsettling atmosphere. Late-night visitors frequently report an overwhelming sense of unease, as though they are being watched or followed. 5. Albany Cemetery, Albany, WA. Located in the picturesque town of Albany, Western Australia, Albany Cemetery, also known as Memorial Park Cemetery, is a place of historical significance and eerie mystery. Established in the 19th century, this cemetery is one of the oldest in the state and serves as the resting place for many of Albany's early settlers. Over the years, it has become a hub for ghost stories and paranormal activity, drawing the curious and brave alike. Albany Cemetery was established in 1836, shortly after Albany was founded in 1826 as Western Australia's first settlement. Initially, the cemetery was a modest burial ground for settlers, convicts, and Indigenous Australians. In its early years, Albany was a remote and challenging settlement. Disease, shipwrecks, and the hardships of colonial life resulted in many untimely deaths. The cemetery reflects this grim reality, with graves belonging to young children, sailors lost at sea, and settlers who fell victim to harsh conditions. As the town grew, so did the cemetery, becoming a mosaic of diverse lives and tragic stories. Many headstones bear inscriptions that offer glimpses into the hardships faced by those buried there, including victims of the Spanish flu pandemic, mining accidents, and even murder. By the mid-20th century, stories of hauntings began to emerge. Visitors reported seeing shadowy figures among the gravestones, hearing unexplained sounds, and experiencing a sense of unease. The cemetery's location, surrounded by dense bushland and often shrouded in mist, adds to its ominous atmosphere. Over time, paranormal investigators and thrill seekers have explored the site, uncovering chilling stories tied to its history. The cemetery has also been featured in ghost tours, cementing its reputation as one of Western Australia's most haunted locations. The most famous ghost associated with Albany Cemetery is the woman in white, often seen wandering near the graves of young children. She is described as a sorrowful figure dressed in flowing white garments, believed to be the spirit of a grieving mother who lost her children to illness. Many visitors report feeling as though they are being watched or followed, even when alone. Some have described hearing faint footsteps or whispers, only to find no one nearby. Paranormal investigators have documented sudden drops in temperature, particularly near older graves. Equipment used to detect electromagnetic activity often spikes in these areas, suggesting a paranormal presence. Near a cluster of children's graves, visitors have reported hearing the faint sound of a child crying. Some claim to have seen the apparition of a young boy sitting by a gravestone, only to vanish when approached. Glowing orbs and strange lights have been seen floating through the cemetery, particularly on foggy nights. These lights have been captured in photographs, adding to the site's mystique. Rumors. 1. The unmarked graves. Many believe that the spirits of those buried in unmarked graves are the source of much of the paranormal activity. These souls are thought to wander the cemetery, seeking recognition or peace. 2. The restless sailors. Albany's history as a port town is reflected in the cemetery, where several sailors are buried. Legend suggests their spirits linger, tied to the sea and their untimely deaths. 3. The cursed tree. An old tree in the cemetery is rumored to be cursed. Those who disturb it are said to experience bad luck or encounter ghostly apparitions. The cemetery's isolation, tragic history, and numerous unmarked graves contribute to its haunted reputation. Many believe the spirits lingering here are tied to unresolved stories, tragic deaths, or the emotional energy of those left behind. Disturbances to the site during restoration projects or natural events, such as storms, are also thought to stir up paranormal activity. 4. South Brisbane Cemetery, Brisbane, QLD. Nestled in the bustling city of Brisbane, South Brisbane Cemetery, also known as Dutton Park Cemetery, is a site of historical and paranormal intrigue. Established in 1866, this sprawling graveyard has become famous not only for its rich heritage but also for the chilling stories of hauntings and ghostly encounters that have emerged over the years. South Brisbane Cemetery was established during a period of rapid growth in Queensland. Designed to accommodate Brisbane's increasing population, it became the resting place for a diverse array of people, including politicians, soldiers, immigrants, and everyday citizens. In its early years, the cemetery was well maintained, with beautifully landscaped grounds and intricate tombstones. However, the cemetery also reflects the hardships of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, such as disease outbreaks, tragic accidents, and poverty. Many of those buried here, including young children and entire families, succumbed to illnesses like cholera and influenza. The cemetery quickly became overcrowded, with burial plots overlapping due to poor record-keeping and limited space. Over time, neglect and natural disasters, such as floods, caused significant damage, disturbing graves and contributing to the cemetery's eerie atmosphere. By the mid-20th century, South Brisbane Cemetery was largely neglected. Overgrown vegetation and crumbling headstones gave it a foreboding appearance, fueling local legends of hauntings. Paranormal activity became a frequent topic of discussion among visitors, cemetery staff, and residents of nearby areas. In 1974, the devastating Brisbane floods caused severe damage to the cemetery, washing away soil and exposing several graves. Many believe this disturbance awakened spirits, leading to an increase in ghostly sightings and unexplained phenomena. Efforts to restore and maintain the cemetery in recent decades have preserved its historical significance, but they have also stirred up old legends and reinforced its haunted reputation. One of the cemetery's most well-known apparitions is the Lady in Black, often seen wandering between tombstones at night. Witnesses describe her as a spectral figure dressed in old-fashioned mourning attire. She is believed to be searching for a lost loved one, her sorrow palpable to those who encounter her. Many visitors report hearing the laughter and cries of children, especially near the graves of young ones. Some have even claimed to see small shadowy figures darting between the trees, disappearing when approached. Numerous visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature and the sensation of being touched by unseen hands, particularly in the older sections of the cemetery. These occurrences are often accompanied by a sense of unease or dread. Whispers and faint conversations have been heard emanating from empty areas of the cemetery. Some paranormal investigators have captured EVP, electronic voice phenomena, recordings, featuring voices saying words like "help" or "leave." Shadowy silhouettes have been spotted moving among the graves, often vanishing when approached. Strange lights, sometimes described as glowing orbs, have also been seen floating through the cemetery at night, with no apparent source. Rumors. 1. The restless convict. Some believe the cemetery is haunted by the ghost of a convict who was buried in an unmarked grave after a tragic end. This spirit is said to be responsible for the eerie footsteps often heard at night. 2. The cemetery keeper's ghost. legend tells of a former caretaker who continues to watch over the cemetery in the afterlife. Visitors have reported seeing a man in old-fashioned work clothes, who vanishes when approached. 3. The Weeping Widow. A story circulates about a widow who visits the cemetery every full moon, kneeling by her husband's grave. Some say her ghost continues this ritual, with faint sobbing heard in the quiet hours of the night. The combination of tragic deaths, unmarked graves, and the disruption caused by natural disasters contributes to the cemetery's reputation as a paranormal hotspot. Many believe the spirits lingering in the cemetery are tied to unresolved stories, forgotten graves, or the emotional energy of mourning families. 3. St. John's Cemetery, Parramatta, NSW. St. John's Cemetery in Parramatta, New South Wales, holds the distinction of being the oldest surviving European cemetery in Australia. Established in 1790, it serves as the final resting place for many early settlers, convicts, and historical figures. While it is a place of immense historical significance, it is also steeped in eerie tales of hauntings and unexplained phenomena. St. John's Cemetery was established just 2 years after the first fleet arrived in Australia. As one of the earliest burial grounds, it became a reflection of the harsh realities of colonial life. Convicts who perished under brutal conditions, settlers who succumbed to disease, and soldiers who met untimely deaths were buried here. The cemetery grew rapidly, becoming the resting place for over 50,000 individuals, many of whom lived lives filled with struggle and hardship. Among the graves are notable figures such as Reverend Samuel Marsden, known as the Flogging Parson, and convicts who played key roles in shaping Australia's early history. During the 19th century, the cemetery faced challenges such as overcrowding and neglect. Over time, many graves were left unmarked, their stories forgotten. This neglect is often cited as a reason for the restless spirits said to haunt the grounds. By the early 20th century, reports of strange occurrences began to surface. Stories of ghostly apparitions, mysterious sounds, and unsettling presences became a common theme among visitors and caretakers. Paranormal investigators began exploring the cemetery, uncovering tales of lingering spirits tied to its tragic history. Restoration efforts in the later 20th century aimed to preserve the cemetery's historical significance, but these efforts also stirred up old legends and encounters. Disturbances to unmarked graves during restoration work were thought to awaken spirits, further intensifying the cemetery's haunted reputation. Reverend Samuel Marsden, infamous for his harsh treatment of convicts, is said to haunt the cemetery. Visitors have reported seeing a stern-looking apparition dressed in old clerical robes, walking among the graves. Some claim to feel a cold, oppressive presence near his tombstone. A shadowy figure believed to be the ghost of a convict has been seen weeping near unmarked graves. This apparition is often accompanied by the faint sound of chains rattling, evoking the harsh punishments convicts endured during their lives. Visitors exploring the cemetery have reported the sensation of being touched or tapped on the shoulder, only to find no one behind them. This phenomenon is especially common near the older graves. Soft whispers and faint cries have been heard in the dead of night, especially near the graves of children. Some believe these are the voices of spirits who died young, seeking comfort or acknowledgement. Strange lights have been seen floating among the tombstones, often described as glowing orbs that vanish upon approach. Paranormal investigators have captured these phenomena on camera, though their source remains unexplained. Rumors. 1. The forgotten convicts. Many believe the unmarked graves of convicts are the source of much of the cemetery's paranormal activity, as these souls were buried without proper rites or recognition. 2. The woman in black. Legend speaks of a mourning woman dressed in black, often seen kneeling by a grave before disappearing into the shadows. 3. The ghostly guardian. A mysterious figure resembling a caretaker has been seen patrolling the cemetery at night. Some say this spirit protects the graves from further desecration. The combination of tragic deaths, unmarked graves, and disturbances to burial sites contributes to the cemetery's haunted reputation. The energy of forgotten lives and unresolved stories seems to linger, manifesting as ghostly phenomena that continue to intrigue and unsettle visitors. 2. West Terrace Cemetery, Adelaide, SA. West Terrace Cemetery, located in Adelaide, South Australia, is one of the country's oldest burial grounds, with a history dating back to 1837. Over nearly 2 centuries, it has become a place of both historical significance and chilling ghost stories. Known for its intricate Victorian tombs and tragic tales, this cemetery is infamous for paranormal activity that draws ghost hunters and skeptics alike. West Terrace Cemetery was established shortly after the founding of Adelaide. It became the final resting place for pioneers, soldiers, and settlers, as well as those who met untimely or mysterious deaths. The cemetery reflects Adelaide's diverse cultural heritage, with separate sections for Catholics, Protestants, Jews, and other religious groups. During its early years, the cemetery witnessed several outbreaks of disease, including cholera and typhoid. Many graves belonged to young children and entire families who succumbed to these epidemics. The sheer volume of burials and the sorrow tied to them may have laid the groundwork for the hauntings that followed. Over time, neglect and vandalism plagued the cemetery, with many headstones damaged or lost. Some graves were left unmarked, while others were disturbed during expansions. These disruptions are often blamed for the restless spirits said to wander the cemetery today. By the mid-20th century, stories of ghostly encounters began to surface. As urban legends grew, West Terrace Cemetery became a hotspot for paranormal enthusiasts. The chilling tales of apparitions, phantom footsteps, and eerie sounds turned the cemetery into one of Australia's most haunted locations. Ghost tours started in the late 20th century, during which visitors reported experiencing unexplained phenomena, further cementing the cemetery's reputation as a paranormal hotspot. One of the cemetery's most famous apparitions is the woman in white, often seen wandering near the graves of children. Believed to be the spirit of a grieving mother, she is said to emit a sorrowful energy, leaving witnesses with a profound sense of sadness. Frederick Carr, a prison executioner buried in the cemetery, is said to haunt the grounds. Visitors have reported seeing a shadowy figure near his grave, accompanied by a sense of unease and dread. Numerous visitors and tour guides have reported the sensation of being touched or grabbed by unseen hands, particularly in the older sections of the cemetery. Whispers, crying, and faint laughter are often heard near unmarked graves, especially during quiet nights. Paranormal investigators have captured EVP recordings of voices calling out names or pleading for help. Mysterious lights and shadowy figures have been spotted darting between tombstones. These sightings are most common in the northern part of the cemetery, where many of the oldest graves are located. Rumors. 1. The unmarked grave curse. Some believe that disturbing the unmarked graves brings bad luck or even curses to those responsible. 2. The vanishing boy. A recurring tale speaks of a young boy who appears lost, asking visitors for help. He is said to vanish if approached. 3. The phantom coachman. An old legend tells of a ghostly coach that can be seen late at night, carrying the souls of the forgotten dead. The cemetery's long history of tragic deaths, epidemics, and disturbed graves likely contributes to its paranormal activity. The unmarked and forgotten graves, combined with the energy of countless grieving families, are believed to fuel the hauntings. 1. Rookwood Cemetery, Sydney, NSW. Rookwood Cemetery, located in Sydney, New South Wales, is one of the largest and oldest cemeteries in the Southern Hemisphere. Officially opened in 1867, it covers nearly 700 acres, housing over 1 million graves. Known as a necropolis, it is a resting place for countless souls from diverse cultural and religious backgrounds. Its sprawling expanse, elaborate Victorian monuments, and eerie silence give it an undeniable aura of mystery. The cemetery's origins are tied to Sydney's rapid population growth during the 19th century. As smaller burial grounds became overcrowded, the need for a larger cemetery arose. Rookwood, then known as the Haslam's Creek Cemetery, was selected due to its remote location. It was designed as a garden cemetery, with manicured paths, ornate tombstones, and peaceful surroundings. By the late 19th century, Rookwood had become a resting place for both the wealthy and the working class. Grand mausoleums stood alongside modest graves. The cemetery's train line, known as the Rookwood Necropolis Line, transported the dead and their mourners from Sydney to the burial ground. Tragic events, including child deaths during epidemics and families torn apart by poverty, marked the cemetery's history. This sorrowful atmosphere may have sown the seeds for the paranormal activity that followed. By the mid-20th century, tales of hauntings began to emerge. As urban legends grew, Rookwood's once serene reputation transformed into one of unease and curiosity. Stories of ghostly apparitions, strange noises, and eerie phenomena spread among visitors and workers alike. Over the decades, the cemetery's vastness and isolation made it a hotspot for ghost hunters and thrill seekers. Its old Victorian sections, overgrown with vines, became especially notorious for paranormal sightings. Numerous visitors have reported shadowy figures darting between headstones, especially near the cemetery's older sections. Workers have recounted hearing footsteps behind them, only to find no one there. One of the most famous apparitions is the Lady in White, said to wander near the graves of children. Described as a sorrowful figure, she has been seen kneeling or weeping at certain tombstones before vanishing into thin air. Many visitors claim to hear disembodied whispers, especially around dusk. These whispers are said to grow louder near unmarked graves, as if the dead are trying to tell their forgotten stories. Unexplained lights and glowing orbs have been seen floating among the tombstones at night. Paranormal investigators have captured these anomalies on camera, though their origin remains unknown. Some have reported hearing the ghostly sound of a train whistle, believed to be linked to the old Necropolis line that ceased operation in the 1940s. These sounds often occur late at night, accompanied by the faint clatter of train wheels. Rumors. The cursed graves. Some graves are believed to be cursed, bringing misfortune to anyone who disturbs them. Buried secrets. Rumors persist about unmarked graves containing the remains of murder victims, fueling speculation of restless spirits. Vanishing visitors. Urban legends tell of people who enter the cemetery at night, only to disappear or emerge with no memory of their visit. The sheer size of Rookwood Cemetery means many graves are neglected, with headstones eroded by time. The forgotten and unclaimed graves are often said to be the source of much of the paranormal activity. The weight of history, combined with countless untold stories of tragedy, contributes to the cemetery's haunted reputation.